again, everyone. I'm Renee Nesbitt. Welcome to a special edition of Health Talk. It's brought to you by TV3 and Fayette Regional Health Systems. Fayette Regional will soon open Northstar Recovery, a new state-of-the-art withdrawal management center made possible by a nearly $10 million federal grant from the Indiana State Department of Health through the Ryan White HIV/AIDS Program Part B. Planned to open in July, Northstar Recovery is a 46-bed, all-inclusive 4.0 detoxification unit and programs with a special attention to those diagnosed with HIV. This is an important step towards helping Fayette and surrounding counties combat drug and alcohol addiction along with the opioid and HIV epidemic. We understand that Northstar is only a small part of combating the increasing and ever-changing drug and alcohol addiction problem in Fayette County and in Indiana. That's why we've invited some very important guests to this special roundtable edition of Health Talk. I would like to go around and give everyone a chance to introduce themselves and tell a little about themselves. We'll start with you, Charmin.
My name's Charmin Gabbard, and I currently work as a recovery coach. I work in our local harms reduction program, and I lead 2 support groups, and I am a person in long-term recovery.
I'm Tim McDivitt. I'm the team leader for Northstar Recovery at Fayette Regional.
I'm Sharon Cranfield, founder and executive director of the House of Ruth here in Connersville.
And I'm Joey Laughlin. I'm the current Fayette County Sheriff and also president of the Fayette County Drug Abuse Prevention Coalition.
Thank you all for joining us today on this special edition. So let's go ahead and get started. My first question to the group is, isn't drug use a choice?
Okay, isn't drug use a choice? In the beginning, when I started using, it was a choice. However, after a short period of time, I felt like it became a coping mechanism to deal with a lot of issues that I had that I didn't know how to deal with. So I'd say in the beginning it is a choice, but after a while it's not.
And science also shows that it alters the brain structure, it alters the function of the brain, it hijacks the reward system, and also affects the stop circuit that tells us when we've had enough of anything and don't need to do that anymore for survival.
All right. So what happens after detox and a patient is discharged from Northstar Recovery Center?
On our end, what will happen is we'll work with discharge planners as soon as they come in so that they either go back to the referral source and remain with them for services, or maybe develop engage in services with Fayette Regional. We're developing outpatient more. We're also looking at residential treatment and transitional treatment. And then there's some other options in the community, which Sharon can probably speak to.
What we have is I have an 18-month program for women, and when people come to me after they leave detox, I have resources for men and women that I can help them get into transitional living and into a program that will help them. Detox is the first step, and then it's always, a longer term program is better, because I feel like that you have to change their way of thinking, their lifestyle, everything about them has to change. And detox is very important because it helps them get over the withdrawal, and it helps them cope with the idea of even becoming into recovery, because a lot of people can't. It's that detoxing that causes so many people to relapse and go back to using, because it's so much easier to use than it is to fight the addiction, unless they have the tools and the support and a new way of life. And we call the House of Ruth a fresh start, because you have to have a fresh start, because so many people have generational addiction in their life. Their family uses, their children uses, they use. So unless they are taken out of that environment, it's hard for them to go back into that, because it becomes familiar to them again and they start using again.
I think one of the most important things that I had to learn was the drink or the drug is just a symptom of the problem. Mm-hmm. That's not the problem at all. The problem's within. It's within our way of thinking. And so until we change our way of thinking, which after detox, because detox is just a short period of time. So that is just enough for a person to get physically well, but restless. So there is a then what that for someone to be successful, the then what is required.
Sure.
I think we're fortunate in this community to have professional and other faith-based, recovery-based activities that people can attend to continue on with their recovery and to maintain, to start it, to maintain it, continue forward. And I look forward to our outpatient being able to provide intensive outpatient services for people who need various options, such as daytime programming, nighttime programming, or Saturday programming.
Right. And we'll also touch a little bit more on those resources here further down, but I wanted to go back to Sharon for just a quick minute. You had mentioned transitional living in House of Ruth. Can you explain a little bit about what that transitional living looks like?
Excuse me. Yes. After the women are in the program for usually 9 months to a year, we actually have opened 2 transitional homes. And now what they do is after they have done intensive outpatient treatment, they've completed counseling, they've completed criminal addictive thinking. We have so many different programs within the House of Ruth. And then they have gotten gainful employment. They can actually move into another home, apartment style, and living with other women, and they can actually have their children living there. So they learn a new way of life with a support system behind them. Because sometimes I think people, they have to learn how to live in a drug-free environment and learn how to life skills. They have to learn how to take care of their children, because a lot of people, when they're in addiction, they're taking care of their children. They're not really taking care of their children. So they have to learn. You would be surprised, women have to learn how to do laundry, how to, we teach them basic skills as saving, going to the bank and starting a saving account, saving money, having a checking account, learning to pay their bills on time, helping them get their driver's license back. And that's part of the transition side of learning how to cope in the real world. And that is all done during and while they're in the program. And I just call it basic life skills.
So they're actually already acclimated back into the community.
Yes.
At that point. Okay.
Yes. And then when they get done with the transitional living, they're ready. They have money saved to where they can actually go and put a down payment, a deposit on their apartment, on a house, on their utilities. And we help them with furniture. And we help them with the struggles that ordinarily overwhelm people and can cause them to relapse because they feel overwhelmed and have no hope. So we help them get all that going, and that's very important in a person's life when they're in recovery.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
How are those patients funded?
Now, the women in the House of Ruth, we are now affiliated with NR. We are certified through the NR, that's Indiana Affiliation of Recovery Residences, and Recovery Works. There's a grant in the state of Indiana that they will pay for the women the first 6 months of their stay. They will pay for them to be there, so it offsets our costs. And then there are women that does not have drug charges that can get food stamps off also, so that helps them, kind of offset the charges at the House of Ruth.
Okay, thank you. And Tim, can you touch base on how patients will be funded through the Northstar program?
In the Northstar program, we'll have private insurance, we'll have insurance such as HIP 2.0. We're also going to look at other funding. If someone is not able to pay, we're going to look at other payer sources to make sure that we do not turn anybody away. We have ClaimAid in the hospital who can work as a navigator to try to get people signed up for insurance who don't have insurance.
Okay, thank you. So what kind of socioeconomic impact does this have on our community?
From our standpoint, as a sheriff, and I have a unique perspective, I would say, I worked the drug, worked the drug division for 6 years, And during that time, I'm so sorry. During that time, we seen a lot of prescription medication when that was being abused, and following those trends and, identifying and arresting those individuals. And then we started to see when heroin came into the community, it really ravaged the community like all throughout the United States. And, from our standpoint, it's made our jail population grow to the fact that, there's discussions on building a new jail and adding on to the jail. So the impact from our standpoint has been extremely great. Our officers we're low on officers. We're dealing with more and more people that have needles on them, that have narcotics on them. That when I first came out, if you came across somebody that had any drug on them, it was a big deal, and it became very commonplace here in this community and from law enforcement standpoint. And just, I see the impact from kids. I'm in the schools teaching the Schools Rocks program and Project Alert, and the kids that have been impacted is great. We had a young lady, and I've told that story, I believe, here before when we talked to Ronnie, but we had a young lady that came up and talked to us about the needle exchange and talked to us about Narcan, and really to hear young people so affected by this and seeing their parents overdose and lose parents, you're just hearing it a lot. So the impact that it's had here in this community has been grave, and that's when I've talked to, been at roundtables at Sharon's Place and several different state senators with Joe Donnelly, and they've always asked, what do you guys need? And every time I've told them a detox program. And when I heard what Fayette Regional was doing, I was so over the moon, because to me it was a missing component. We have so many other things in place, that adding this, because we see them, we see people at their worst at the jail. People are down, but just before I came in here, I was telling Sharman, I ran into an individual that I had arrested on drug charges that just got out, and he apologized to me. He said, "Man, I did a lot of bad things in this community, and I'm sorry." And I told him, I said, "You don't owe me any apology. Just be better. Be the person you were intended to be." And there's a lot of good stories and a lot of things that we all could share. But it's been rough. It's had a huge impact here, and I'm always the eternal optimist. And things like this, every time I hear you guys talk about Northstar, I get excited every time, because I'm like, that's the last component we needed to to really have a whole wheel of help for these people. Because when we turn them out of jail, they do have community corrections, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. They have Sharon's place, but to add this and have continuing help, and they can get detox and get on the right path, and the drug court, I'm sure we'll talk about later. A lot of good positive things on the horizon. So.
And you talked about the going into the schools. So are you seeing a lot of younger kids that are using, or that this is impacting, or?
More so impacting. We primarily deal with, we're in 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th grades now, and 8th, and we're looking to add 9th. Mostly it's the impact of what the parents have done. I think the good thing is, I do think what we're doing is working. There's 4 officers from the city police and 3 of us from the county, and I think getting to these kids before they get there, and the stuff they see from their parents, then they're very open. I've had 7th grade classes where kids have openly talked about their parents shooting up heroin in the house, and their parents going to jail, and my dad just got 5 years, and it breaks your heart. I dealt with addiction a different type. My dad was an alcoholic, and thank the Lord he got arrested in our driveway and was sober till the day he died after that. But I know that pain, and going through that as a child of an addict, and kids are forgiving, they want them to be better, but seeing that in the schools, breaking that cycle, that's why we're there. We want to break that cycle, and for those kids that aren't going home and dealing with that and going home to a good home, there's still the possibility, but it's a much less likely percentage that they're going to. But those kids that have been impacted to it, if they already see it and they don't want to go down that path, and we're hitting them with the statistics and information we are. Hopefully we can keep them away from it too and repeating that cycle.
Well, thank you so much for your guys' willingness to do that, because we all know that prevention is so vital in all of this, and so we appreciate the prevention side of things that you and your officers are doing. Can someone touch on what these patients look like? There's such a stigma on what an addict looks like, so if one of you could touch base on that.
They look like me. I mean, I am an addict. Yes. I feel like that oftentimes people hide it well, and so your next door neighbor could be an addict. I mean, used to, the stigma was that it was someone that was homeless or dirty or you would see on the streets, but that's not the way it is at all. I think we have more prescription addicts than what we can tell, but it's everyday people. It's your next door neighbor. It's the woman you run into at the grocery store. It's anyone.
Kind of touching base on that, so as community members, how do we know if someone is using? What does that look like, and how can we find help until Northstar opens in July?
I think there's obvious signs. I mean, you can walk at McDonald's and you'll see someone that is stooped over the counter, or someone whose speech is slurred, or someone that's acting out of the ordinary by like uncontrolled movements and things like that. So there's different types of drugs, and I mean, if you're concerned about a family member that's using, I think that oftentimes you can reach out to someone in the medical field, or we have several resources in the community, several support groups, or even Google it. I mean, you can, oftentimes on Facebook, it shows different signs and symptoms of an addict, pinpoint pupils, like I said, slurred speech, someone talking really rapidly, or in a state of psychosis that just makes no sense. Someone that's missing work a lot, not an everyday functioning person, someone that's not going to work, someone that's not sending their kids to school. There's the obvious underlying reasons, and oftentimes it's from misuse of drugs or alcohol.
I would add, don't ignore obvious signs that you see. Don't let an addict is going to try to convince you it's everything else than what it is. I'm tired, I don't feel well, and I've heard them, and it's tougher when it's your friends and your family, and if anyone should know, and I've had friends that you go, he kind of seemed weird today, and then later you find out, and I lost a really dear friend of mine last year that I had been around and had no idea until a few years ago, and tried to get him into a few different rehabs, and he was on some good paths that he got on, but I didn't see it until somebody had told me, hey, this is what he's doing, and kind of it opened my eyes. So don't ignore things that you see right out in the open, or you think, well, that's kind of odd behavior. Identify it, and to me, I always think the best thing you can do is confront them in a positive way. Hey, here, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Can we get you some help? Because, if you come at an addict hard, most of the time they're going to put up more of a wall. So there's a reason they're doing what they're doing. So don't ignore obvious clues.
I agree with Joey too, with love. With an addict, like when someone does come at them, it's always there's so much guilt and shame within already. But if you come at someone with love, I mean, they may not want to hear what you have to say, but you're more apt to get through. And don't enable a situation. Don't give someone that you're suspecting of using money. Don't help them, because they'll continue to play off that, and oftentimes they don't get you don't get that second chance, the looking back on, if I would have done something different. Being an addict and being the mother of an addict, I don't want to be the mother that loves her son to death. I don't enable my child ever. I set those boundaries, and there's nothing wrong with loving someone, but don't give them money. Don't feed into their addiction, because oftentimes we keep people sick. And so the best thing you can do is reach out for help. When someone's lying, stealing, something's missing, something's severely wrong, and there's a reason for it.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. How will Northstar impact the service that you provide to the community?
Northstar will open up some avenues that maybe aren't available right now, or they'll broaden those, like I mentioned before. We will expand on outpatient services at our new setting on Park Road. We'll offer intensive outpatient services, which will be a longer course of treatment, but allows a person to still stay in their home or whatever, and then attend on a nightly basis or daily basis, weekend basis, to get treatment and make improvements in their life. We also, like I said, are working on residential treatment, 28 days. We're hoping to be able to develop those plans out, and at some point follow that with transitional treatment that would follow the residential, because some people, like Sharon said, need a longer time. Some people are ready and they may know what they want and they go after it. Other people may know the same things but not know how to get it, so they need more support, or their history of using is longer and they've had different times of trying and they just haven't done well, so maybe more support's needed. And then we hope, along with these other things, that they access their support groups in the community also.
And can you explain a little bit of the difference between intensive outpatient and just regular outpatient services?
I can. Intensive outpatient, like I said before, is 3 nights a week, 2 to 3 hours each time. At our setting, it'll be 3 hours, and it usually goes for 12 to 16 weeks, all depending on the program. Outpatient might be that a person is going through some depression, some drug use, something like that. They're doing well, but they need the additional support and they don't need as intensive services. They may come once every 2 weeks. And if medication's appropriate, then they may also come quarterly for a med checkup and those type of things.
So is it all individual therapy, or is group therapy also included in some of that?
Group therapy is what IOP would be, but there might be individual therapy along with that. And then just regular outpatient is usually, unless for a specialized problem and appropriate for group, it's usually individual.
Okay, thanks. So we've talked about multiple resources. So I want to go back and actually expand on those a little bit. Charmin, I know that you have developed Brianna's Hope here in town. Can you explain a little bit about that, and then some other resources and support groups that are available to our community members?
Sure. Brianna's Hope is a faith-based peer support. It's peer-to-peer, and we have those that are in recovery, those that are still struggling, and family members of. We're pretty much, we welcome you with open arms, no matter where you're at in your recovery, or even if you're just a family member of. We meet on Tuesdays. And so oftentimes we'll have speakers, someone that will come and give their story and share their experience, strength and hope with the group, or we'll have a topic. So each week we have something new, and you just don't get the same thing twice. And there is a meeting somewhere every night in Connorsville except Saturday. So there are peer support, or there are some sort of support group that's available every day of the week here except Saturdays. And Community Corrections also has 4 groups down there that with a referral you can get into, like anger management, thinking for a change. I think
Criminal addictive thinking.
Yes, criminal and addictive thinking.
Living in balance.
So there's lots of resources available. And for someone new into recovery, to just indulge yourself with as much support as you can. Not every pathway works for everyone. So like my biggest suggestion is go and find out what works for you, but get all those connections that you can. In recovery, it's a full-time job. There's no days off in recovery, just like there's no days off in your addiction. So they say that you need to spend as much time on your recovery as you did your addiction. And I agree with that.
So where can someone find information about those support groups, such as where they're held, what time they are, that information?
I actually just made an updated list, so someone can stop down at the health department, and we have little packets that have overdose signs and symptoms in it. We have the list of all the local meetings in there, and the suicide hotline information as well. Or at Brianna's Hope, we have it. We don't have a website.
Okay, but they can stop at the health department and get any of that information.
Yeah, and also Narcan. That's available at the health department for free as well.
Okay. Do they have to sign up to get that, or is that just a stop in and?
if someone is interested in having Narcan, they can just stop by and we'll give them a little training and then the understanding of what to look for, the signs and symptoms to look for overdose. But it's really recommended that anyone that's on prescription opiates or has a family member of or knows someone that's using to have it.
Perfect, thank you. And Tim, I know Northstar just started a support group as well. Can you give a little bit of that information?
I can. Our support group meets the first Thursday of every month at 5:30, I believe, 5:30, and it was originally for people who've lost someone to an overdose, but we're looking to expand that to people who've experienced any type of loss because of family drug use. And so we've only had 2 meetings so far, support group meetings. We're hoping that as we're there longer, more people attend, and as we expand the scope of it, that more people will attend. And I also want to add that a person can go on na.org or aa.org and also search for meetings in their local area or any area of the country and maybe find Narcotics Anonymous meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. But we meet, back to our support group, we meet at the Frazee building?
The old Frazee building.
The old Frazee building.
The Haven.
At the Haven. So we're at the Haven the first Thursday of every month at 5:30. We meet for an hour. What you hear there stays there. Come there and find support and support others that may also understand what a struggle it is to have a family member who is addicted, or if you've lost someone to addiction, please come.
And you can also find that on the Fayette Regional's website at fayetteregional.org for that information. And then, Joey, you touched just a little bit, or just kind of mentioned drug court. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I believe we're going to be starting up in July. Judge Freed had applied for a grant for an additional drug court, and I believe initially there'll be 12 participants in that who will be, in lieu of their sentence, will be monitored and will report to the court weekly based on a different type of way to try to see if we can help some people, and as it goes on, it will expand, I believe, into quite a few more. I like it for the fact that it's going to keep some people out of jail, keep our population down for one, but also some people that are that necessarily jail's not going to fix everything. That jail is possibly going to set them further away from their goal and getting them out and doing the court. I'm excited. I want to be the law enforcement representative. I'm sure Judge Freed could give you a lot more details than I'm giving, but I'm really excited about it, though. I think it's going to be a really positive thing.
All right, does anyone else have anything to add, last minute information?
We do have therapeutic communities in the jail. I would want to add that obviously that's not something that's available to anybody unless they get arrested, but it is something that we're trying to do for people that are incarcerated. We don't want them just sitting there idle time, just doing their time thinking about, all the bad that's happened in their life. We want to try to turn people back out so they are ready for all the post-incarceration treatment that is going to be available. So wanted to add that.
Thank you.
And this Saturday, we're having a event at the House of Ruth, and the hospital's going to be there. Sherman's going to be there, and Sheriff Joey Laughlin, and it will give people these resources. They can pick them up. They can ask questions. They can tour the House of Ruth, and sometimes I think people with the stigma of addiction, they're embarrassed. They're, guilt and shame. Families don't talk about it, but you're able to come up there, and it's from 11 to 5 on Saturday, May 26th, and everyone will be there to help you. If you have problems, we will give you resources and places that you can turn to.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. As we know, not one entity can beat this drug epidemic alone, and we as a community are all in this together. So I appreciate each of you taking your time and joining us today on this special edition of Health Talk. That's all the time that we have today. We look forward to everyone joining us again next time on Fayette Regional's Health Talk. I'm Renee Nesbitt. Stay healthy, Connorsville.